today we are very excited to announce a new feature, a new addition to the Prewave solution, which we feel like is really a missing puzzle piece in realizing our full vision as a company. And the full vision is end-to-end supply chain risk management. Yeah? And that means not just identifying risks, but also solving them. Yeah? And this is, I think, to be a little bit self-critical, something that supply chain startups and risk startups are not really good at. Yeah? It's all about AI and where is the risk and where are the alerts and what is happening, but to actually have a clear understanding of how to improve supply chains and how to give a product that allows actually this, yeah, going from a clearly prioritized risk matrix to a risk matrix where the prioritized risks are mitigated. So moving from here to here. And this is where we want to be, really reducing the overall risk footprint of our supply chain from a resilience perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective. And the risk matrix that we have here is the right tool to do that. But of course the question still is, how exactly can that be done? Yeah? And I mean, quick sidestep, but this end-to-end risk management is precisely what also this due diligence legislation actually asks for. Yeah, they talk about identifying, evaluating, mitigating, and then reporting on your progress. And that not just once, but in a continuous cycle. And I think that is correct. And it's actually good to see that also these legislations are following these fundamental principles of risk management and due diligence in a way that actually makes sense and actually will improve supply chains going forward. But back to this question of how can we now get from prioritized risks to mitigated risks? How is that possible? And in the risk matrix, as I said, it's the right tool to do that because it gives us kind of two paths to improve our supply chains. The first path is to reduce the impact. And that is, let's say, at first glance, a more, how should I say, convenient way, because as the customers, you as the companies, that's in your direct sphere of influence. Reducing the impact, you have that in your hand. Yeah? Because reducing impact means I reduce the importance of that supplier, or I reduce the strength of the relationship I have with that supplier. Meaning, if I identify here a risk supplier, and it's up here because there is a lot of risk, yeah? Maybe they had some issues also in the past around human rights issues, as an example, and we're having a lot of spend and a lot of influence on that supplier, for instance. Or from a resilience perspective, if this supplier fails, we cannot replace them. We have no alternative. It's a single source supplier. It's a specialized goods supplier. So, of course, one way to move this supplier here from the red to the yellow or to the green is to, in the most extreme way, stop doing business with that supplier. That is the most extreme way. But of course, we can also increase safety stock from a resilience perspective, from a sustainability perspective. We can, yes, do less business with that supplier. And eventually, it might mean to actually redesign the products and services we are offering so that we are no longer dependent on this supplier. And I think as you hear me speak, you're realizing this is actually not that easy. This is actually, from an operational perspective, extremely difficult. Increasing safety stock, maybe yes, but redesigning products, redesigning supply chains, depending on the type of supply chain you have, might be an extremely long-term undertaking. We are talking about years and certainly not months. Yeah? So let's look at the other way to improve the supply chain. And the other way to improve the supply chain is actually to reduce the risk of that supplier. So what makes this supplier a risk supplier? And again, depending on the risk we observe at that supplier, we might have some levers we can use. Yeah? So maybe the supplier has a low maturity around information security, or maybe a low maturity around human rights or environmental awareness. Some things, of course, are harder to solve. Let's say the supplier is located in a hurricane area or earthquake area. We cannot relocate them easily, yeah? But still we might be able to take some prevention measures that are possible. So working on the risk dimension always means this is not my direct sphere of influence, because I'm dependent on the supplier working with me. Yeah? The supplier actually needs to improve, the supplier needs to certify, needs to change some standards and things that actually reduce the risk. And reducing risk means reducing the likelihood that something bad happens. That is what this really means. But some of the tools that are available to reduce risk at a supplier are actually quite efficient and are actually relatively inexpensive and can be deployed very quickly, especially compared to the reducing impact part. And what are those tools? Yeah, those are tools like, for instance, trainings and certifications. Yeah? So tools like trainings and certifications, audits, and various other risk-based and risk control measures that actually help us to get a better understanding and actually also improve the maturity and capacity of that supplier. And this is what I wanted to show with this slide, is that if you now think this through, what it means to actually reduce risk in the supply chain and to improve a supplier, then to be perfectly honest, this is still a missing puzzle piece in the end-to-end risk management of Prewave. Yeah? Because we are not yet giving you the actual tools to do that. We are giving you a planning tool, yeah, which says, okay, I plan to do this and I plan to do that, but you still need to do it yourself. Yeah? And this is actually the hard part. Yeah? Again, what this means is that we need to find ways to actually build capacity and maturity at suppliers. And this is this toolbox I described earlier, from audits and certifications to desk audits, really engaging with the maturity of that supplier, giving them corrective action plans, supplier engagement and consulting. All of these are things that will actually improve or rather reduce the risk of a supplier. Reduce the likelihood that something bad happens. And let me give you a personal example. What is the biggest supply chain risk that Prewave poses to its customers? It's information security, clearly. Yeah? So, and our customers know this, and that's why our customers require us to be certified according, for instance, to the TISAX standard, so the information security standard of the automotive industry. And we underwent this certification process, and as part of that, we underwent internal awareness trainings, so educating our employees. We had an audit, yeah, we had several penetration tests. All of those are risk control measures, and I can tell you from first-hand experience, this really works. Yeah? It doesn't rule out the likelihood for a bad thing happening completely, but it certainly reduces the risk. It certainly does. Yeah? If I look back from the maturity level where we were 2 or 3 years ago to where we are now, we are at a much higher level of maturity, and the likelihood for something bad happening is certainly significantly reduced. And this is what I mean with building capacity and maturity. And the same thing applies to human rights and to the environment and other topics as well. And it also means that improving a supplier really requires a mix of actions. Yeah? It's not all audits, yeah? And it's not all certifications, and it's really a mix of actions that need to be selected appropriately towards the given situation at the supplier. We might see suppliers that already have a quite advanced maturity, so they're probably in awareness training is not the right step. Yeah? But a supplier that has never heard of ISO 14001, an awareness training might be a good and appropriate next action. And The BAFA, for instance, sees it the same way. Yeah? In the questionnaire, they give various areas on what actions are you taking to actually prevent and mitigate risks at your direct suppliers. Yeah? And one of the topics or options they give, the boxes to check, is to develop and implement appropriate sourcing strategies and purchasing practices. This is more on the internal side of you, the customers. But then they explicitly mention training, training and education of suppliers, but also of the own business area, and we will hear that later. And they also have a broad point, which is agreeing and implementing risk-based control measures. And this is really the bucket where we have audits and certifications and assessments and even media monitoring that we are employing at Prewave is kind of a risk-based control measure. Not the most effective one, it's really a hierarchy of effectiveness, but it is one of the risk-based control measures that is there. So we need to employ a mix of actions, and that is what we need to do to make you ready to report to the authorities, but also for you to really improve your supply chains. And there are existing platforms that allow you to take actions, and these platforms are good. And we have, for instance, the RECI, which is the audit initiative of the automotive industry. But that's in exactly what I just said is also where the problem is. Audit initiative automotive industry. So it's a closed club. Yeah? It's only audits, and it's a closed ecosystem to just one part of the industry. And same is true for other audit platforms. They oftentimes have a focus around a certain industry, potentially audit-intensive industries like the pharma industry or the textile industry or the food industry. But most of our customers at Prewave are manufacturing clients and companies, and oftentimes mid-market, Mittelstand companies, and they are certainly not part of any of these initiatives if they are not in the textile industry or others. We have initiatives around desk audits and assessments, but also typically focused on a single action or focused on a closed ecosystem. And that is why to get, let's say, from these prioritized risks and mitigated risks, we want to now introduce a new feature and functionality that adds this missing puzzle piece back in. Yeah? And that gives you, as the customers, the opportunity to take action in an integrated and seamless way with various partners in various areas. And we call that feature the Prewave Action Platform. So the Prewave Action Platform brings together partners with strong expertise in various areas, strong consulting partners like Learning, PwC, Taylor Wessing, Valantic, who have years of experience in working like Learning with human rights risks, like Taylor Wessing in actually getting you ready for due diligence and legal requirements. But we also have partners for audits and certifications, TÜV Süd. No need, I think, to introduce TÜV Süd. Awareness trainings, Quizzer, a company out of Sweden, who is working with some of the largest companies worldwide to train and improve their suppliers with awareness trainings. Ulula and the Rainforest Foundation around supplier engagement. So it's really about bringing together partners on a cohesive platform that then allows all of our customers to take action with their suppliers in a platform model, and to take action on 500,000 total suppliers. This is the total number of suppliers we currently have on Prewave. But we will not take action on 500,000 suppliers, and our customers don't want to take action. It's around prioritized actions and prioritized mitigation measures. So if we actually break it down and we took the time to look at the data, what is actually the real number of risk suppliers where our customers both see risk and influence across all of our customers. And the number we are working with right now is around 10,000 high-risk suppliers. So this is really the size of the problem we're working with. Yeah, it's not 500,000, it's 10,000, which is closer to a solvable problem. Yeah? And one of the main benefits of the Prewave Action Platform is that it allows you to take action in a seamless way, not having to contract with each individual partner separately, but having one platform where you can take actions out of. And whatever actions are taken, and this is the most important part, the results are fed back in a clearly defined structure into the Prewave risk scorecard. And that means whatever actions you take, they have a clear impact on the risk profile of the supplier. Have we conducted a good on-site audit with no findings, the risk score will improve. Have we conducted an on-site audit with terrible findings, the risk score will worsen. And same is true for awareness trainings and every other measure we want to take. And this is the integrated end-to-end part where eventually then we can also report to the authorities. And this is then, if we have it all in one system, this is then it's a buzzword, but it's a one-click reporting. Yeah? Because we know what actions you took, we know what impact they had, we can track your progress over time, how has your supply chain improved, so the impact analysis is there, and then we can, out of one hand, realize this goal towards an end-to-end supply chain risk management. So let's go a little bit deeper into how it really works. I think it looks good so far on a high level, but how does it really work? First of all, the actions we are providing in the action platform are chiefly the ones that are the S3 and S4 actions. So the actions that we as Prewave are also not doing ourselves, yeah, because we clearly need to realize what is our core competency, and that is, of course, around media monitoring, maturity assessment I will get into, that is starting to become a core competency, and self-assessments and code of conducts. Yes, we also have some, but there's also premium questionnaires like the ones from Taylor Wessing or from Learning. You will hear about them later. But we need to realize that the more effective measures are also more resource intensive and more cost intensive. So we need to work again in a risk-based approach to take, or to typically start with the less resource intensive and less costly actions and work towards the most resource intensive and costly actions that are also typically the most effective actions. So again, we are in the risk funnel, and the action platform is built on the foundation of starting with the risk suppliers. Yeah, so this is really the scope of the action platform. It starts at the later stages of the funnel. Yeah? And this is the key, let's say, parameter that we also use. What are the number of risk suppliers? And then we apply the various actions in a risk-based manner to really apply the most resource-intensive measures to the fewest number of suppliers that are also the most critical suppliers. So let me give you an example of a sample customer. We set up a scenario here of, let's say, a medium-sized manufacturing company. Yeah? Let's say they have 2,000 suppliers, and out of these 2,000 suppliers, they have 100 risk suppliers. This is, let's say, not an unusual example. Yeah? This is more in line with what we're seeing from our customers. So obviously, they would not be working with 2,000 suppliers in the action platform. They would be working with the 100 risk suppliers in the action platform. And they would be starting with the S1, so S stands for severity, so with the lowest severity measures. And the first measure we're introducing, and this is a new measure we are bringing online for you, it's called maturity assessments. Now, what is a maturity assessment? A maturity assessment is where we use our existing capabilities to analyze public data, to scrape websites using a combined approach of artificial intelligence and human intelligence to actually identify publicly available certificates, policies, audit reports, grievance mechanism in place, yes, no. So what can we find out publicly about the maturity of a supplier? And again, this is in line with our philosophy at Prewave, where we want to do as much as we can without bothering the supplier. And if they put it up on their website, we will use it. We will plug these certificates and policies, we will validate them, and then we will plug them into the scorecard as part of the assessment score. So the outcome of this, and we have now run this with 10,000 suppliers, and we did prioritize the risk suppliers of most of you already in this audience. So you will start seeing certificates to appear in the profiles of your suppliers. And a valid certification reduces the risk of the supplier, so increases the risk score in Prewave. And based on these 10,000 suppliers, we have so far a 50% success rate on average, meaning for 50% of suppliers, we do actually find certifications, policies, things that help us to add to the assessment score on their website. And this means that with this 50% success rate, from the 100 risk suppliers, we are actually left with only 50 we now need to work with. Because these other 50, they are falling out of the funnel. They are now, let's say, green. Then we get to work with self-assessments. Self-assessments, as those who are really working with self-assessment know, have a certain answer rate. And this is not 100%. Depends on the length of the assessment and so on, and on the supplier base. But let's assume we get 50% good answers. So of those answer rates we have, on the whole, 50% of the suppliers can again prove they have a certain maturity. So they can show they have policies, they have certifications, they have been audited, etc. So then again, 25 fall out of the funnel. And we are left with 25 high-risk suppliers that, based on the maturity assessment and the self-assessments, they are now at a low level of maturity. Or they have really severe risks, severe incidents in the past that are affecting the risk score. And here then we start applying, let's say, the more intensive measures. And we are left here then with 25, and let's say we are applying now some worker surveys, some awareness trainings, and some desk audits. And based on that, we can again remove some of those suppliers out of the high-risk supplier into the medium-risk supplier section. And then we are left with 5 critical risk suppliers. And for those 5, for 3, we decide to on-site audit them. And for 2, we actually decide we want to end the relationship with these suppliers. Which, out of 2,000 suppliers, 2 we decide to offboard, I think is a ratio that we can live with. Of course, this is optional, this is just my example. But it shows you that we can easily get from 100 risk suppliers, or even more, 2,000 total suppliers, to a relatively low number of actions that are actually taken in a risk-based manner to actually mitigate those risks in the supply chain. Before we introduce the action partners to you, I want to quickly go into the benefits of the action platform, because the action platform is a subscription-based model, a membership model, that being part of the action platform gives you certain benefits. The first benefit is that when you become part of the action platform, we are doing these maturity assessments for all of your risk suppliers. So this is part of the benefits of being part of the platform. Meaning we want to get you through the funnel. The second benefit is that we will give you the opportunity to choose some of the premium questionnaires we have available as part of the action platform. For instance, the Taylor Wessing checklist for the own business area, LKSG, or the Learning Human Rights questionnaire that can be bundled into the action platform membership for you. It will also give you unlimited access to platform actions, because we will eventually open up this platform to also allow the suppliers to take actions to proactively allow the suppliers to improve themselves on the platform based on your request or based on their own effort, because they see that they have a lot of customers on Prewave already and they want to get from a risk supplier into a non-risk supplier. And Prewave itself, so you've seen before, we have a big fundraising behind us. We are also committing to take a certain number of actions that we are actually financing proactively. Yeah, and the number we're putting out there right now is 500 actions. We want to jumpstart this platform also for you. Yeah? So we are committing to take 500 actions, meaning a combination of audits, trainings, proactively as Prewave. And that would also platform actions, so those financed by Prewave or initiated by Prewave and the suppliers will always be available to the members of the platform. Eventually the platform, and this is more later this year, but eventually, of course, the goal of the platform is to allow for shared actions, that customers can join together, and if they have a joint risk supplier, they can act together and split the costs and also bundle their influence, which is also important. A very operational benefit, but an important one, is that the action platform, which of course we also plan to expand it as we go, means you can take action with various partners without the need to actually contract with those partners directly. But we are enabling you to do this through the action platform. There are some exceptions, for instance, in the case of legal firms, for instance, where this is really a hard requirement. But as a standard principle, we want to set up the platform so there's no additional contracting necessary for you. And last but not least, the action results integrate into the scorecard to allow for this end-to-end risk management and to allow for the seamless reporting. So since we're already, as I see, 8 minutes over time, I do want to show a 2-minute demo, because I think there's still 2 questions that we need to address. What does this look like in the platform? And then what's the business model? What's the price? These are the 2 questions that are open and we should address them. Quick demo. Yeah? So within Prewave, the members of the action platform will find a new section of the tool which will list the various services of our partners. Yeah? Each partner and the services they list will be available for the platform. You can see what they are offering, and then you can enable or disable these services. For instance, in the case of Quizzer, a social compliance training. And once we enable this particular service, then within the action planner, recommendations for actions, we will then also get these services in the recommendations directly provided for you. Yeah? So you can instantly see what the options are. You can decide which services you want to use as part of your action mix or system of consequences. And then it's really just at the click of a button where we see here the social compliance training associated. Here we have basically a way to track the limit. Yeah? So you will get, as part of your subscription, a certain limit of actions you can take. Yeah? And we will be able to track that in the system. Yeah? So here we have 500 of the limit. Then once we take this action, we can then execute this action, select which contacts we want to include in the awareness training, and send a training request. We will get in touch with Quizzer, sitting over there. They will get in touch with the supplier, do the training, and what we need and what we want as an outcome is then that the results are then showing up in the scorecard. So once the training is finished, the results are in our scorecard. We can access basic results out of the Prewave system. And optionally, we will also be able to access the platforms of our partners where you have all of the in-depth analytics and dashboards and reporting. But in Prewave, we will have a basic action result available for you. So that's the action platform in Prewave. And now to the last question. So what's the business model? Let's take our example supplier with the 2,000 total and 100 risk suppliers, who takes a certain action mix. This company will get a subscription that is tailored to the size of the risk suppliers they have, and it is tailored to the number of actions they want to take. This is an action mix. This is not set in stone, but this gives a rough outline of how many actions you will be able to take. So this is really a process where our sales team will tailor this action mix also according to your appetite. Maybe you're in an industry where you want to audit more, maybe you want to audit less. So we will have some flexibility on arranging that. And what you get at the end is then a simple subscription price per month that allows you to access this scope of services with your desired action mix. And that's it. So so what I'm left to say is join the platform. First of all of our partners you have seen today, they are exhibiting outside, and one of the partners who we have not yet had up here is the Rainforest Foundation, and you will see them in a dedicated speaking slot in maybe half an hour. The official launch of the platform is September 2023, and until then we will enter a pilot mode. So we have a certain, let's say, contingency or allotment of pilots available, so get in touch with us. Yeah, we are piloting. The pioneer packages, if you want to become a pioneer, these are the especially attractive packages for this year. Get in touch with your Prewave representative. We would like to see you on the Action Platform soon. Thank you very much.